الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Continue إن شاء الله تعالى with the book of Akhsar المختصرات, and we stopped at وما تلف سوى يسير. Read it. We stopped at in the chapter of or the فصل بيع الأصول والثمار, the last few lines that he says وما تلف سوى يسير بآفة سماوية. Now, so the last thing that we talked about is the selling of الثمار or selling the produce if it's ready to be used or harvested once it shows with the different types of plants and trees as mentioned. And this is by the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and some of the masail that is related to this. So, and these usul meaning things that are not movable versus things that is movable. And he talked about al-dar and al-ard, the house or buildings, and the land, and some of the rulings there, and what is to be harvested in different ways, whether it's plants or trees. And then after that, he says, وَمَا تَلِفَ سِوَى يَسِيرٍ بآفة سماوية فعل بائع. وما تلف سوى يسير. These last masail here in this chapter is with regards if there is disputes or something that ruined, who would take the daman of it, or who would be upon the mushtari or the ba', upon the buyer or the seller. So here this mas'ala وما تلف سوى يسير. تلف التلف when something is ruined, something destroyed. So وما تلف سوى يسير. سوى يسير, that means except يسير, except something small, something insignificant. So this is with regards to الثمار. This is the produce that it's still on the trees or on the land before it's harvested, that it's permissible to sell as long as it appears and it's ready. And we'll still talk about what does it mean to have, what is budu salah means. The salah is when it's ready to be harvested, when it's ripe. What exactly constitutes this is going to be mentioned in the next statement. But if, again, this is with regards to the things that are still on the trees, did not get harvested yet. So if a person purchases it, as mentioned before, and then something happens, it get ruined. He says here, siwa yasir, if it's all get ruined, the entire crops get ruined, bi'afatin samawiyya. Al-afa is a deficiency or a disease or something, but samawiyya from the sama, from above. That means it's something without the actions of the human beings. So the seller, he did not do anything. No one attacked the land to ruin it. It's just a storm or something, or cold weather, something like that, that ruined the entire crops. If it's a small portion of it, then it's insignificant, then it does not apply here. Now we have in this mas'ala to understand it, someone already purchased the produce, not the usul, not the trees, not the land, just the produce of the trees or the plants. And afa samawiyya comes, which is something beyond the capacity of the human beings that ruined the crops. Who would then be incur this loss? Is it the buyer or the seller? Because it's already been sold to someone. He says فَعَلَى بَائِعْ. Then it's upon the ba'i', it's upon the seller, not upon the mushtari, not upon the one that purchased. Because usually if someone purchased something and he already have it, if something happens to it, he's responsible for it. He does not go back to the seller and he gets what's in return of this. But here, this is a special situation because there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that he ﷺ clearly stated that. So it becomes upon the seller because it's still in his land. And why would someone, would put his brother in some loss that he was not responsible for? So this is by the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what happened. So the ba'i' is the one that would be responsible for that, the loss. وَمَا تَلِفَ سِوَ يَسِيرٍ, except yasir. We're not getting into the evidences and things like this. We just want to understand the masail. So who would be upon that? فَعَلَى بَائِعٍ, upon al-ba'i', which is the seller. Clear? But with a condition here. مَا لَمْ يُبَعْ مَعَ أَصْلٍ, as long as that produce is not يُبَعْ. يُبَعْ is in what tense? مبني مجهول, passive tense. ما لم, as long as it's not يُبَعْ, as long as it's not been sold, right? مع أصل, with أصل. أصل is what? Foundation, roots. That means the tree itself. So if the buyer had purchased the entire, not just the crops, but the tree itself, and آفة سماوية, something comes from above, storm or whatever, ruins the crops, the buyer, he's the one that would incur that loss because he purchased the trees and the plants and everything. But if you only purchase the produce, then it's upon the seller. Okay, so except ما لم يبع مع أصل, except what has been sold, meaning this produce with the أصل, with the tree itself. أو, the second exception, أو يؤخر أخذ عن عادته. And we're making sure that we're making the ضبط تشكيل to make sure that we read it correctly, inshallah. أو يؤخر أخذ عن عادته. أو, or يؤخر. يؤخر means something is delayed. أخذ, here it's as a noun. أخذ, that means taking something. So the taking of or collecting the produce has been delayed عن عادته, different than the عادة, than the norm. So he was supposed to collect it or harvest it or maybe after he purchased it by a week or two. The norm is that still, it needs to stay in the trees for a few weeks or even, whatever the norm is, after it already been shown that it's ready, right? And we'll talk about what constitutes this. So if he delayed it more than the norm and something happens, who would then incur the loss? The buyer, right? So these are the two exceptions where the buyer would be in loss. He will carry the loss here in this case if it's an آفة سماوي, if it's heavenly, basically like something like a storm or something like this. So as long as it's not been sold with the tree itself or the land, and also as long as it's not been delayed harvesting more than the norm. These are the two exceptions. Of course, if this is here, this mas'ala, the ulama, they call it al-hawa'ij, or the issue of al-hawa'ij. Ha'ija, ha'ija, that means a disaster happened or a storm or something like that. So this is not the norm of things. So this is the ruling of it. Which means, as a result of understanding this, if it's not آفة سماوية, if it's something else, someone else attacked the land or something like this, then the person that did the wrong or the ruined it, he's responsible. So after this is mentioned, then وَصَلَاحُ بَعْضِ ثَمَرَةِ شَجَرَةٍ. Now the salah, he'll talk at the end of this chapter about the salah. What makes the produce now salihah, that means it's ready, it's, I don't want to say the word ripe, because as we said before, if it's the type of plant where it shows from its flower, like the cotton, for example, or flower has to open first, and then something is shown there inside. The produce is shown from the very first stages of it. So that means if a person can purchase it like this, correct? So that's why what is the definition of budu salah? Budu is showing. So as-salah, the showing of its readiness or its uprightness or its good or whatever. Like the salah of the human being, when someone is salih, that means someone is righteous, someone is upright. But this has to be ضبط with, we have to fix it in words according to the language of al-fiqh, according to the understanding of it. So it's not just linguistically or returns to the urf or to the normal. There's very specifics. And it's also to the urf, so we consider it if there's no clear meaning of it. So he says here, وَصَلَاحُ بَعْضِ ثَمَرَةِ شَجَرَةٍ. صلاح بعض. بعض means some. ثمرة شجرة. الثمرة is the produce. شجرة is the tree. So here, if some of the produce is ready to be, is good, it's shown, right? It has this بدو الصلاح. We need to remember this بدو الصلاح. بدو الصلاح. بدو showing, and الصلاح, that means it's ready, it's good. And we still didn't talk about, this is actually the next one. So if some of it is fit the previous criteria in which it's can be sold. So the flower opened, النخل الطلع, remember the طلع, what happens if تشقق, if it gets split open in the palm trees and things like this. So if that happened, but some of it only, not the entire crops, just some of it. He says صلاح لجميع نوعها الذي في البستان. Then that means everything is ready, can be sold. If some showed its readiness, then this is صلاح لجميع, to all نوعها. نوعها is the kind of it, the type of it, not الجنس النوع, because there's jins and there's نوع. الجنس is the kind, and نوع is the specific type. So if he's planting different types of specific fruit, so apples, for example, but there is different types of apples, yellow and red and things like this, for example. So the red ones, once some of the red ones, start to show, then all the red can be sold, because this is the same now, the same type, not the entire field, but only the ones that come in with the same type. صلاح لجميع نوعها. صلاح to all of its نوع, نوعها, referring to the tree. الذي, the one that is في البستان. البستان is what? The garden or in the field. Okay, so this مسألة here, وصلاح بعض ثمرة شجرة صلاح لجميع نوعها الذي في البستان. As you see, وصلاح بعض, some, ثمرة شجرة, ثمرة of the شجرة. ثمرة, the produce, شجرة is the tree. صلاح, then this is صلاح لجميع نوعها, to all of its types, الذي في البستان, the one that is in the garden. So now فصلاح ثمري such and such. Now the salah. What is the salah? What means the salah of a thamar? What does it mean to say the produce is ready, or salah was right, or upright, or good, or whatever? Then he says, can you go tell them to stop? He says, فَصَلَاحُ ثَمَرِ نَخْلٍ. Now he's going to start one after the other. فَصَلَاحُ ثَمَرِ نَخْلٍ. What makes the produce of the nakhl صالح? That means it's ready, it's good. أن يحمر أو يصفر. أن يحمر أو يصفر. That it becomes red or yellow. So that means it's ready to be harvested. أن يحمر أو يصفر. This is what it means to صلاح وثمر. وعنب أن يتموه بالماء الحلو. And the inab is the grapes. أن يتموه بالماء الحلو. أن يتموه, from the water. That means it has the sweet water inside. That means it's not very dry. When the grapes in the very early stages, it's very tough. There's no water inside. So this is يتموه بالماء الحلو. That has water inside. يتموه is the verb of it, with the sweet water, if it's correct to say, which means that it can be eaten. وبقية ثمر, and the rest of the thamar, the rest of the produce, is بدو نضج. بدو نضج, the appearance of a nudj, or a nudj is when something is nadaja, that means a grown. So this is بدو نضج. That means the beginning of how it looks. So previously, everything, as he mentioned, the palm tree, things open and things like this, But this is specific for some specific plants or trees or fruits. And in general, that it looks like it can be ready to be used. وطيب أكل. وطيب أكل, that means it's good to be eaten. وطيب أكل. This is فصلاح ثمر نخل وعنب وبقية ثمر. And then after that, something else before the end of the chapter. ويشمل بيع دابة وقن. Now there is the selling of a dabba. A dabba is the animal, is included in selling it, because before we talked about the house, what includes in the house unless it's specified. So the same thing, if someone sells a dabba, an animal, then includes in it عذارها ومقودها ونعلها. Again, this is also refers to the urf, but عذارها ومقودها ونعلها. When you sell a horse, what do you put on the horse? You have the rein, you have the bridle. Did I say that right? And you have the na'al. So مقودها is the bridle, and مقودها is the rein, اللجام, and نعلها, the na'al is the shoes, right? But it's the sole, which is the metal thing that they put underneath it. So this is included. It's not separate because that's part of it, unless it's specified in the contract. So that's included. وقن ويشمل بيع قن. القن is the slave. لباسه لغير جمال. His clothing لغير جمال, excluding the ones that are used for beauty. So the special clothing that is he would wear in Eid or something like that, just the normal clothing, so that it's included. So this is the end of this chapter. Then after that, he talks about as-salam. Okay, if you have questions, inshallah ta'ala, we can have it also at the end, inshallah. You have questions? طيب, inshallah. Then he says فصل ويصح السلم بسبعة شروط. Now this is the chapter about as-salam, بيع السلم. This is an important subject, and it's a form of buying and selling that is different than the norm of where things have been mentioned before. And as-salam, or in some languages, as-salaf. As-salaf is when you borrow something. But as-salam here, because it's mentioned also in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he doesn't mention the definition of it first, but it's basically, as the ulama they say, بيع موصوف في الذمة. When someone sells something, and it's very common in the produce and plants and things like this, and it can be applied in other things also if it fits the same definition. And many things in the time that we live in can be applied here. So you're not selling something that you own, something that you have, something عيني, something specific, but rather you sell something موصوف في الذمة, something that is described by the ذمة. الذمة is your own covenant or your own trust based on your own. You have it, but it's not something physical. Not sure what's the word that can be given as a translation to this. That's why I need lots of help with that. It's not written here, but it's when you sell something that you don't have it as something specific. What that means is, for the crops, a person or the farmer would sell whatever the unit of volume for dates, for example. Or if we use the weight, he would sell 1,000 kilograms or 1 ton of dates after a year. He doesn't have the produce yet, but he would take the money now and he would hand over the produce after a year, because he needs the money to work on the land, and the buyer would benefit from this because he would get it on a cheaper rate. And the Prophet ﷺ approved that clearly. So this is a form of selling something that a person doesn't own. So what is he selling? He's selling something that is موصوف في الذمة, something that is described with very specific description, as it will come with its conditions, and the person would guarantee this. This is basically what it is. And dhimma, that means he would guarantee to hand it over, and that's why he has to take the money first. What if after a year, as it's going to be mentioned, nothing happened? His trees did not give these fruits or these produce. He's supposed to bring what they agreed upon, the same weight or if it's volume, according to the description. So he can go purchase it from the market. He deal with it, and he has to bring it to the buyer as described. So this is an important thing, is even for the nowadays things when people sell a house before it's built, right? And they can put all the money up front, or sell something that it's going to be manufactured, right? So there's conditions here has to be applied. So what are these conditions? They say بسبعة شروط. It's 7 conditions. So this is what السلم means. ويصح السلم بسبعة شروط. It's correct if it's valid with 7 conditions. The first one أن يكون فيما يمكن ضبط صفاته كمكيل ونحوه. I want to make sure also, again, the words are being pronounced right. So أن يكون, that أن يكون, that it's according to what? فيما يمكن, that salam, that to be sold later. أن يكون فيما, in what? يمكن, that is valid, possible. ضبط صفاته. ضبط is when something is precise, and صفاته, its characteristics or description. So the description is very precise. So it has to be very clear. كمكيل ونحو, like makil. How, what's the volume of it is going to be exactly, how the weight of it is going to be that like this. Something that is manufactured, described clearly. Like for example, even someone when they purchase a car that is not even manufactured yet. So they will tell you the kind of it, the type of it, the motor is like this, and everything, so they give them the catalog. This is what you're going to purchase. So you purchase from the catalog every single detail, very precise, right? So, and then he would pay the price of it, and then he receives it after they manufacture it. So the sifat has to be very precise. So now this is someone that is selling something that he doesn't have, and it's not a specific thing that is owned by someone else, because that's not salam. It's not like you will go to someone, you sell him a specific type of a car that your neighbor has, right? And you tell him, this is the car I'm going to sell to you. No, you're talking about a specific car here. So this is not something specific. So this is something that is not there yet. It's going to be done. أن يكون فيما يمكن ضبط صفاته. So the first condition is the صفات is it's feasible to be precise, to be described in very precise description. كمكيل ونحوي, like the makil, which is the measure, ونحوي, and the like of that. The like of that, even in the past, for example, some things they might not be able to precisely describe it, but now they can, so the ruling will change. So, for example, the potatoes, for example, the size of it. There's different types and grades and things like this. So it has to be very precise. What type, the size of it, things like this. So, and the same thing with things to be manufactured. كمكيل ونحوه. And then he said, this is the first condition. Clear? The second condition, وذكر جنس ونوع. وذكر, that means to mention, to be mentioned specifically in the contract. جنس ونوع. The jins is the kind and نوع is the type. So bananas. And then the نوع, what type of bananas? Like this. وذكر جنس ونوع. Or car, what type of, what the specifics of the model and things like this. وذكر جنس ونوع وكل وصف, and every وصف, every characteristic, يختلف به الثمن غالبا, and every characteristics that يختلف الثمن, the price will change or will differ, غالبا, most likely. So anything that is needed to be known that might change the price. So all the details has to be there. And he says وحداثة وقدم. وحداثة, something hadith, something that is new. وحداثة, حداثة means new. وقدم, the opposite, which is something old. because if it's something that is new, it's different than something that is old. Something that if it's old, it's worth more, like cheese, for example. I'm just something versus something that'd be more expensive if it's new. The date is the opposite. If it's a newer date means much fresher than another type, then the price will differ. So this is all just examples to make sure that it's precisely described. وذكر جنس ونوع, even though it's kind of related to the first one, but the first one is the general صفات, general prescriptions or description of it. Second one is the jins, the نوع, the type and the kind, and every wasf, every characteristic that the price will increase or change as a result of the differences of it. وحداثة وقدم, whether it's new or old. And then number 3, وذكر قدره, and also the mention of its measure, it's how much is it, how big, small, things like this. And that's why he says after that, ولا يصح في مكيل وزنا وعكسه. لا يصح, it's not valid. في مكيل, if something that is مكيل, something that is measured by volume, to be mentioned as it's going to be as weight, to be given as weight, and the opposite. And al-makil al-shar'i, as we mentioned before, unless it can be precisely measured. So nowadays, again, if the dates used to be measured by volume, now it's by weight, that's fine. But if it's something that cannot be precise with weight and they mention the volume of it, then it doesn't work that way. All of that because the characteristics or the description is not being precise. The fourth condition, وذكر أجل معلوم. وذكر أجل معلوم كشهر. وذكر, that means it has to be mentioned. أجل is a limit, a time. معلوم, known, كشهر, like a month. So because it's deferred, it's delayed. The delivery is going to be late. So it cannot be if it's something now. If it's something now, this is buying and selling. It's not called salam. If a person purchases something and he gives it today or tomorrow or something like this. Salam, that means it's going to be done, so it requires some time later. وذكر أجل معلوم كشهر. Does it have to be month or less or so? It depends on really, is it considered to be salam, delayed, or it's something that is not really delayed. And then he says, number 5, وأن يوجد غالبا في محله. وأن يوجد, and that it's found or present. غالبا, the word غالبا means what? الغالب is the norm, is something that is always like that most of the time. There might be some exceptions, and always the hukm, the ruling is based on al-ghalib, not based on the exceptions, but based on the norm. This is how it's always the case. You don't give and that's why if someone says something, and that's why when a person learns the fiqh, he becomes smarter actually, and he understands what people speak and things like this. So if someone is saying something, you don't take the words of a person this is the exception. No, this is the norm. The exception requires a special attention to it, right? So that's why he mentioned here, أن يوجد غالبا, that it's most likely to be present في محله, in its place, in the place where they made the contract, in the place where they would talk about. So doesn't have to be, because again, it's not present. So someone is going to purchase something and he's from one city, then it should be given in the same place, unless it's specified in the contract in a different place. He says, فَإِن تَعَذَّرَ. In ta'adhar, that means it was not feasible, from al-udhr, excuse. Something happened and he's not able to deliver it in the same place, or not able to deliver it completely, because again, it's something that happens in the future. So he's not able to deliver what they agreed upon. أو بعضه, or some of it. They agreed on 1,000 kilograms and he can, provided only 500 or something, some of it. Then sabr, to be patient till he gets him the rest of it. أو أخذ رأس مال, or he would take the money that he paid. And then he has the right, of course, to take his money. Or remember the mas'ala of tafriq الصفقة, to dissect, or the splitting the deal. So if he got him half, then he can return half of the money, or whatever they agreed upon. and he brought some, he can take that some, or he can says, no, I want it all because now this is no benefit for me if I take some of it. So he has the choice. This is if he's not able. It's best, of course, that he's patient. If he gives up or he doesn't, then he can take his money. Number 6, وقبض الثمن قبل التفرق. قبل التفرق. وقبض الثمن. To القبض, as we said before, what's القبض? To have it in your possession with whatever the norm applies here. So al-qabd is to have it in your possession accordingly. وقبض الثمن, to receive the price قبل التفرق, before they depart from one another. So this is a condition for the salam to be valid. So why? Because if he gives some money and the rest is going to be deferred later, that means this is بيع دين بدين. You're selling debt with a debt, because what you're purchasing is not ready. That means it's deferred, and the money is deferred, and this is haram. Prophet ﷺ forbade selling debt with debt. You cannot sell a debt with another debt, in principle, with whatever debt means, and you cannot purchase something with a deferred payment for something that is not ready and you're going to receive it later. So now this is dayn bidayn, whether it's partially or completely. So that's why it's a condition to receive the money. So something that is hal, something that is immediate, which is the money, and the delivery will be later. وقبض الثمن قبل التفرق. And the 7th one, وأن يسلم في الذمة. وأن يسلم في الذمة. Yuslim is the verb of as-salam. So this transaction, that means he's gonna deliver it late, in a deferred time. في الذمة. في الذمة again means not something that is present. It has to be في الذمة. That means he guaranteed it. He described it. And you know, anybody remembers a verse that has the word ذمة in it? No. لا يرقبون في مؤمن إلا ولا ذمة. The disbelievers, that لا يرقبون, they don't recognize in a believer إلا ولا ذمة, the relationship, the kin and kith. ولا ذمة. A ذمة comes from this covenant, this honor. They don't honor anything. You know, the people of Quraysh, when they fought against the Prophet ﷺ, and comes also from a them. You know, when someone is condemned, so a person would stay away from something that would cause him to be condemned of something. So this is something that a person would have it upon himself, because the deal is he took money and there's nothing that he has, but it's in his dhimma, in his own personal guarantee that is going to deliver whatever they agreed upon. So a salam has to be something في dhimma, otherwise it's buying and selling, which is not salam. He says that therefore فلا يصح في عين ولا ثمرة شجرة معين. لا يصح في عين. A salam does not apply, is not valid if it's ayn, in a ayn. Ayn, not eyes, meaning in a specific thing, something specific. Something that is present, or something that is specific, or even it's not there yet, but it's specific. Like, for example, he would say to give him from what comes from this land, the dates that will come from it specifically. That's not bay'u salam, because he's purchasing something described in the dhimma, right? So it has to be fulfilling these characteristics, not a specific place, not a specific thing. ولا ثمرة شجرة معينة, and not also produced from a specific tree, because it's موصوف في الذمة. Is it clear? No. And he says ويجب الوفاء موضع العقد إن لم يشرط في غيره. ويجب الوفاء. It is mandatory, واجب الوفاء. الوفاء is to fulfill the covenant. أوفوا بالعقود, fulfill the covenants. So this is الوفاء, to fulfill the delivery, basically. السلام موضع العقد, in the place. موضع, the place of العقد, the place of the contract, where they made the contract. إن لم يشرطوا في غيره, unless they make a condition that it's to be delivered in another place. So if they don't make it as a condition, then the seller or the buyer can say, oh no, we made the contract here, so you need to deliver it to me here, in this place. unless it's specified in the contract. Okay, so these are the 7 conditions for the salam to be, fulfilled the way it is. And as you see here, it's very close to the understanding of, we know that it's not permissible. لا تبع ما ليس عندك، لا تبع ما لا تملك. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said, do not sell what you don't own. And you don't sell what you don't have in your possession. So a salam here, is it an exception or it's a separate contract? This is ulama, some of them, they said this is an exception because of the benefit of it. And the exception, we get to know it, not qiyas or analogy, it's by the nas, it's by the text, by the Prophet ﷺ stating this. And those who said that it's a different contract because it's different means here. So because it's different than buying and selling the normal way. And the difference is very clear that it's not something ayniya, it's not something specific. So you cannot do this for something that is present already. You can, in principle, you can sell something to someone. Say, for example, someone enter into a store. You have a store. And he says, I want to purchase a car part or something, anything, right? And you don't have it. You can do one of many different things. Either you call someone else, do you have this part? Or then you can, you would say, okay, you would sell him something that you don't own, and then you would wait for that thing to come and you would give it to him. That's haram. Because you're selling something that you don't own. You can tell him, I don't have it, or you don't have to tell him, I don't have it, but come to me tomorrow, I'll have it, or something like this, or wait, let me get it delivered. Whatever that can be, that you act on his behalf and things like this. But if, in principle, if he comes and he asks that he wants this part, and he would say, okay, I'll get it for you, and the description of it is such and such. So he would sell him something with a description, not something specific. So this is the type of it, the kind of it, everything, all the details of it. Then he go get it from whatever place that he gets it. He's not getting a specific one or from a specific person. He's bringing what has been described in a dhim, what's been described that he's going to fulfill. But that should be after some time, and this is why they have to describe it. This is a debatable issue, but when we look at the original rulings of it, is that it has to be, the sifat has to be very precisely described, the type and the kind and so on, and the weight and the measures and everything else. Anything that would make the description very precise. So this doesn't have to be as mentioned here, that without any ambiguity whatsoever. Has to be deferred, so it's not immediate. And the money, all of it has to be given. It has to be normally in a place where if a person gets something that is not normally to be handed over in that specific time. Someone would purchase a produce and the date of delivery not in the season of it. So it doesn't make sense. So that's why it has to be known that it's going to be delivered. And to take the money and to make it in a dhimma, again, it's not something specific present or a specific tree or specific place. And it has to be fulfilled in the place of the aqd unless specified otherwise. The last part here, and then if you have any questions, inshallah, he says, وَلَا يَصِحُّ, then and it's not valid, بَيْعُ مُسْلَمٍ فِيهِ. Right? Muslim, not Muslim. Muslim is a Muslim. Muslim is the commodity that is being sold with a salam. Right? So they sold and they took the money for dates that is going to be planted, not there yet. So this is Muslim fee. So it's not valid to sell Muslimin fihi qabla qabdihi, before you have it in your possession. So the buyer, he purchased something that is going to be delivered later, correct? Now he purchased it. Can he turn around and go to someone else and sell it to him? No. Before he takes it in the possession, it is not permissible. You understand? So if someone, again, a buyer went to, even if it's a house or an apartment, it's not built yet, and he pays the money and they're going to build it still. with all the description, all the conditions are met here. He has the contract, he purchased something, but it's not built yet. Is it permissible for him to turn around and sell it to someone else? No. Unless he has it in his possession. And people do that all the time, which is wrong. بيع مسلم فيه. بيع مسلم فيه قبل قبضه, before قبضه, before having it in one's possession. لا يصح. ولا الحوالة به ولا عليه. الحوالة, we'll talk about it later also inshallah. الحوالة is when something changed, تحول, something changed from one to another, transferring the debt. Do they do transfer debt? No. So when you transfer your debt on someone else because of the Muslim fee that you purchased, whether the same person or someone else, ولا عليه, whether it's from the buyer or the seller. You have a debt to someone, and the debt doesn't have to be money, can be whatever you even purchased in the salam, can be crops, and you have a debt for someone, that you're supposed to pay for someone else, but now you have that is going to be after a year. So you would transfer your debt onto the seller of the salam. You purchased dates that you're going to receive after a year, and you have a debt that's supposed to pay. So you call the guy that you're supposed to give him his money, tell him, listen, you're going to take your debt from that guy after 1 year. This is hawala, and it's valid with conditions. You can transfer your debt onto someone else. Here you can't, because you don't have it yet. وَلَا الْحَوَالَةُ بِهِ وَلَا عَلَيْهِ. Bihi, that means buy it or against it, whether it's for the buyer or the seller. Both cannot use it as a way to transfer debt. وَلَا أَخْذُ رَهْنٍ وَكَفِيلٍ بِهِ. الرهن also talk about it. الرهن is, and don't take a rahn. You cannot take a rahn. A rahn is something that is for collateral, something that is like when you go to the pawn shop. So, collateral, yes. So وَلَا أَخْذُ رَهْنٍ, you would take a rahn as a result of this contract. No. وَكَفِيلٍ بِهِ. Kafil is the guarantee, or guarantee or something that would use this as a guarantee for something, for purchasing something. You're going to purchase a car, and they want to have a cosigner, for example. You would say, I'm supposed to receive the salam after 1 year, so take this as a guarantee that I would give it to you. It's not valid. Okay? وَلَا أَخْذُ غَيْرِهِ عَنْهُ. And it's also is not valid to take something else other than that what you had agreed upon. So you agreed upon dates, and he could not give you dates. So then, okay, give me barley instead. No, you can't. Then you take your money, but you don't take something in place of it. Right? Because now it's different description, different things. Gharar can apply here. Disputes can be very easy in this. Right. The statement that says وَصَلَاحُ بَعْضِ ثَمَرَةِ شَجَرَةٍ صَلَاحٌ لِجَمِيعِ نَوْعِهَا الَّذِي فِي الْبُسْتَانِ. If some produce in some trees is ready, that means this is a sign that everything is ready. So the buyer can buy the entire crops because some of it is already ready. So it doesn't have to be that he has to wait for every single tree to be ready. No, some of it is sufficient to purchase the entire crop. Yeah, the whole stand can be the same kind, not the whole thing. Yes. Does it have to be written? The salam, does it have to be written? In principle, nothing has to be written, unless they would guarantee their rights if there's a dispute. So witnesses, anything that has to be witnessed, and of course the best is to write it down so that no one, in case of dispute, they would refer to something, whether it's writing. If they go in front of the judge, they have to have bayina or evidence. Otherwise, if someone lies, and there's also mentioned in the books of fiqh, if they agreed with the conditions are met, and someone later says, no, he didn't do this, he did not agree to this, or he agreed to this, then whoever has the evidence, he comes forward. If he doesn't, then they will go by with what the norm of the conditions are. There's no minimum time where it has to be deferred to, but it has to be clearly not a matter of trickery or something like that. It has to be not immediate. So if it's something within a day or 2 or 3, that means it's not salam. So it has to be something that requires that he he doesn't have it now. It has to be worked on, has to be manufactured. Someone sells a computer that he has to get it together. So he has to go buy the parts and things like that. He can sell it to the person now when he doesn't have it. And he would sell it with the description. Exactly, with every single, even for example, as something like the computer, the type of the processor and what is the size of it, every single detail. And then he would purchase and he would give him the money and then he would go give me a week, for example, till I get it together. This can fall into the same meaning. Yeah, the down payment is not allowed. You have to give all the money before they depart, because otherwise it becomes selling debt with debt. You cannot sell something as a debt with another debt. Hmm. No, this is different than بيع العربون. If they put a down payment, it's different than buying or purchasing some. This is different than a salam. Allah أعلم. Yeah, you would give 100%, so that there's nothing, no debt by debt is still valid. Hmm. Hmm. Uh, Maybe can be with the details. This can be different, but we can look at the details, inshallah. But as far as the salam, what makes it as a salam, has to be mentioned like this. طيب, first, let's take the hadith. Do you guys take the long hadith or not yet? Come on. When you take it, then we'll cancel the next hadith, I guess. So what number is this study hadith? Okay, hadith number 19, inshallah. So this is easy. Hadith number 19, inshallah. Let's say the hadith, inshallah. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: التثاؤب من الشيطان. التثاؤب من الشيطان، فإذا تثاءب أحدكم فليكظم ما استطاع. التثاؤب من الشيطان، فإذا تثاءب أحدكم فليكظم ما استطاع. رواه مسلم. This hadith is التثاؤب. التثاؤب is yawning. This is التثاؤب من الشيطان, from the shaitan. It doesn't mean that it's haram, because a person, he yawns. But it means that this is a way of the shaitan to make a person tired, lazy, right? So, and that's what it, the implication of that is what comes afterwards. فَإِذَا تَثَاءَبَ أَحَدُكُمْ, so which is the valid that a person would yawns. فَإِذَا تَثَاءَبَ, if one of you تثاءب, what should he do? فَلْيَكْظِمْ مَا استطاع. يكظم, like وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظ, those who suppress their anger. So فَلْيَكْظِمْ, so let him suppress it. Don't be at ease with it and open your mouth and make noise and things like this. No, try to stop it as much as you can. ما استطاع, to the best of one's ability. So this is what the hadith says. So if a person is yawning, then he should try to close his mouth, put his hand to cover his mouth, like do the best he can so that he does not relax and open his mouth and make noise. And does a person say afterwards, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم? No, there's no authenticity to it, even though it's from the shaitan. So it's just to make كظم, فليكظم ما استطاع, to the best of one's ability. So this is the hadith. إذا التثاؤب من الشيطان، فإذا تثاءب أحدكم فليكظم ما استطاع. نعم، والكاظمين الغيظ. نعم. طيب إن شاء الله Oh, there's the attendance sheet, the attendance. And of course, with the, there's slight or maybe some differences between salam as mainly crops and things like this versus where the ulama they take from the rulings of a salam, the like of al-istisna', which is to manufacture something or to purchase apartment on papers and things like this, which has some slight rulings and differences, which you don't apply everything as mentioned in the salam. We can talk about that later, inshallah. So you see, a common man does not understand the fiqh of transaction. Would he be sinful for doing transaction which is forbidden unknowingly? This is a serious question because, as the ulama they mentioned, a person he has no excuse if he gets into a transaction, not knowing the ruling of it. Why? Because it's especially that it's known that almost every transaction would not be safe or free from any type of riba or things are not permissible. So if he doesn't know, then he should ask a person of knowledge. Unless, if it happens that he thinks that, or everybody says that nothing wrong with it, things like that, then it's okay. But when it comes to riba is a difficult subject. And that's why if everyone is addressed with the subject of a riba to make sure that he knows every single detail of it, this is difficult for every common Muslim. So therefore, there's no excuse to say that it's difficult for me to learn than to ask a person of knowledge. And this is different than buying and selling something. You go to the store, you buy something. This is different, but you have a contract, you have a major dealing, and a person has to make sure that it doesn't have anything haram in it. صلى الله وسلم على محمد وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك